Hello, I'm Tag.
And this is Bob.
And you're listening to Bob and Tag Talk. Before we start the show, I'd like to point out that the topics discussed on Bob and Tag Talk are for informational purposes only. So please don't take this as investment advice. We urge you to do your own research before making any investment. So today we're going to talk about something called ESG investing. So what does ESG stand for?
So the general definition which is commonly agreed upon is environmentally conscious, social, and then governance standards. All these criteria, if they are met, those companies are considered as good choices for ESG investing.
Okay.
So this is actually started by some of the larger fund houses, like a lot of other fund houses, and then accounting firms, and then a lot of other people came together and declared this set of criteria. I think it's a little bit, the criteria is different for different the fund houses probably, or the who exactly is creating the criteria. Maybe minor differences, but the goals are generally largely aligned with environmentally conscious, socially conscious, and then good governance.
Okay.
These are the three main parameters that they're looking for when they're looking at investing in companies.
Okay, so ESG investing is usually termed as something called sustainable investing also.
Yeah, sustainable. Yeah, so basically sustainable in the sense the company should be doing sustainable practices, good environmental, they take care of the environment, or at least they don't pollute too much and things like that.
Okay.
And then good governance, like how is the board organized, how are they taking decisions, how are they paying their employees, board members, and then what is their diversity criteria, what is their, are they inclusive of all people, or are they discriminating, and these kind of things are everything is
taken into consideration.
Yeah.
So these sort of funds and fund houses, ESG fund houses, what are their like charges and all usually like?
It is, so since the criteria is defined by them, and let's say for example there's a mutual fund house, like for example you can take an example of BlackRock or even any Vanguard or any one of the larger fund houses, they can define the criteria. This is our ESG criteria, and we are going to select the companies which are going to meet this criteria. So they will have to invest some kind of people in analysis.
Right.
And when they're analyzing, they'll have to define the parameters, they'll have to define the scores, and then they have to continuously revisit it.
Right.
Some companies can do well at some point of time. Some companies probably can,
do worse later.
So they have to continuously keep updating the scores, and so they have this separate kind of charges. So generally, when it comes to mutual fund, like we have discussed before, we have an entry load, exit load, expense ratio. But when we compare these normal mutual funds that we generally are aware of, and then we see these ESG kind of things, the expense ratio charge is a little bit higher because they do a lot of other work, analysis and things like that.
Okay. So why did such fund houses actually start coming up, and when did they start coming up, if you know?
It, at least in the last, is a trend. It's a political trend, and it's also a social trend. So people wanted, for example, anyone else, you can consider even us. When we try to consider some stocks, we'll have some personal beliefs, we'll have some personal values, and people really wanted to apply the personal values and personal beliefs to when they wanted to invest.
Right.
For example, some people who are really environmentally conscious, they didn't want to invest in companies which pollute a lot. So one of the because of the lot of controversies because of oil spills and damage to the environment, damage to the flora and fauna or the sea and so on, sea ecosystem and so on. So people thought that this is not good. So how do we do better? So they thought was, okay, if I'm going to invest, I'm not going to invest in these kind of companies because they're doing harm to the environment. They can be like a lot of plastic related companies, or even like some transportation and packaging companies which are not using some sustainable products for packaging and so on. So it came up with an individual consciousness, an individual movement towards investing in something which aligns to your personal values. And slowly it became a movement where it's a political trend as well, right? So when you consider in the US, now there are Democrats and the Republicans. Democrats are more, towards ESG.
Right,
And Republicans are more aligned towards oil and other industries.
Right. Things that have already
worked. It became really, really political. And that also caused a lot of issues. But so that was one reason. So people are politically aligned. And then also people were thinking, like, for example, one person's thing, like he doesn't want to invest in any kind of tobacco or any cancer causing kind of products and things like that. And then someone doesn't want to invest in chemicals or things like that, or too many chemicals. People are going organic these days.
Right.
That has been a big movement in the last 2 decades. People like, because people think that a lot of these chemicals, pesticides, are causing cancers or causing other diseases. So they think organic food is better. So they're moving towards organic. So they thought, okay, when I invest also, probably if I invest, I'll invest only to those companies where they're organic and then doing something nice. And then there are a lot of diversity and then social challenges that societies are facing. It is actual facing, or even though life has improved a lot in the last few decades, but people are still want to improve how society behaves, how society, how we are hiring people, how we are equally paying them well, how we are treating minorities or some disadvantaged groups and so on. So if you want to treat those people better, then probably we can ask companies to treat them better, because I'll invest only in your company only if you treat everyone equally and better.
Okay.
So these kind of ideas, everything came together and eventually it became a movement or an idea. And then these fund houses and accounting firms and analyst firms came up with this kind of an idea where they say that, okay, we'll provide you the solution. You don't have to worry about it. You just deposit money month after month after month. We will take care of all these things for you. So that is their idea.
So you mentioned that, there's this political movement in the US and, it's getting politically charged and all of that. So are there right now ESG fund houses in India?
Yes, they are. So ESG, there are mutual fund houses. So mutual fund houses can create a new fund called ESG fund or something like that. So existing mutual funds are the ones who are creating this new kind of strategy. They treat it as some kind of a strategy. Just like how we have momentum strategy, value investing, growth investing. So they are treating this as a strategy, ESG strategy.
Okay. I get that. So we've talked about what it is and what is the cause of this sort of a movement. So what is the criteria for a stock or whatever it is to belong to such a fund?
We'll have a little bit go into details. So let's say environment. When they say environment, it is carbon emission. They want to reduce carbon emissions. Or companies that are doing a lot of things to reduce carbon emissions. And then any other sustainable practices, sustainable packaging, sustainable effluent management or whatever, waste management, and then pollutants and chemicals, are there lower greenhouse gas emissions, and renewable energy. Renewable energy has been the most leading thing in the last 2 decades. So we are moving towards wind energy and then solar energy. But there are a lot of challenges with that, moving completely to move into it. So we cannot actually completely move away from coal or nuclear and so on.
Basically, companies that reduce them as much as possible. That is the environment criteria to belong to an ESG.
That is, it's like one of the common criteria that they're looking for. What people are looking for, what the fund houses are saying that they will look for. But how exactly it affects investing and country in general, it's a little bit debatable.
So that's the environment factor of it. That's the environment criteria of it. What is the social criteria?
Social criteria is mainly about people. So there is social values. So generally we don't actually see companies put a lot of thinking into how are they going to affect society and all. At least in India, there's a thing called corporate social responsibility, CSR, and then companies can fund something like something for the people around, or some disadvantaged people, or something for the city which they are in, where they're consuming a lot of resources and things like that. For an example, you can think of all these soft drink companies. Probably they drill a lot of bowels and then they extract a lot of water. So they do kind of CSR things where they build recharge wells where water is actually again going back to the ground. Rainwater harvesting is done and something like that. So then they consider these kind of things as socially responsible and sustainable. And we have a lot of other things like coming with people. So how people are being treated, how women are treated in the workplace. Are they encouraging more women to join the workforce? Are they discriminating against any section of depending on race or depending on any other orientation and so on. And then there's also been a big movement in the last 2 decades, which is fair wages for women, so equal pay for women. Like I think the football team, US football team, women's soccer team had a big they initiated the movement where they want to be paid equal, because they are one of the biggest teams, and then they did so well and they bring so much revenue, but they were not getting the benefits. It was their idea.
Yeah, that was their idea, but it was later, anyway, it was later pointed out and everything that they did the analysis and they were being paid equally and all of that.
It's debatable. That's the thing.
It's debatable.
There's nothing black and white. There are always points to and pro and cons.
Yeah, got it.
You can't do anything.
So that's the social element of it, where people are being treated right, and you sort of like give back to the society. There's an element of that that comes with the company. Then what is the governance side of it?
Governance side of it is how a company is run. So like what exactly, how are the management of a company is being formed? Are they people being treated fairly? Are women being promoted as equally as men? And then the transparency is, again, corporate transparency is one idea, where is the company being ethical and giving all the details, being transparent about it? Are they hiding something? Are they misusing funds? Are they misusing any other kind of resources and things like that? And also the interaction with government, are they paying bribes and things like that? Those also comes under governance. And then most important thing is it's being discussed, but it has not actually been clear, where how much salaries do CEOs and other management people get, and how much is the lowest paid worker? What is the pay disparity? How many times is the CEO getting compared to the lowest wage worker? And this has been a controversy. It comes up every 2 years. Because the CEOs are getting a lot of bonuses, a lot of stocks. And then, but the average employee or the normal wage employee, his wage is not increasing in the past decade or 2 decades. So these kind of things also they actually consider. Some people consider, some people don't. So eventually at the end of the day, it's how the company is governed.
Okay. So we discussed a little bit about the criteria for environment, social and governance. So what reports or what resources do fund houses use to determine if this company meets this criteria?
Again, it may be different for different fund houses, but largely common criteria is like, is the company high risk? Or for example, let's say coal companies. You may be running out of coal in the next 30 to 50 years. We keep extracting coal, we keep mining. And then mining will also cause losses to people, like loss of life, loss of equipment and earthquakes and things like that. How are they actually dealing with all those things?
Right.
And exposure, mining and coal, and then nuclear. So nuclear accidents, that was also one of the large controversies when Japan went through this nuclear accident, and then everyone had to think through, where do we really have to do nuclear? Is there any other alternative way? Can we actually do solar? So sometimes some people say nuclear companies are not really ESG, are not really sustainable. And then
so the thing is, they'll use certain reports and all to get all this information, right?
Yeah, so generally what analysts get together, they discuss the criteria and they assign a score. Like this particular company, what is their score on environmental concerns? What is their score on governance concerns? What is their score on social concerns and so on? And then they keep a score, and then they have a larger score for some other controversies, issues their company is facing and things like that. And then that overall score, they put it as and then the top scores, whichever company meets that particular criteria, they select them for the fund.
Okay. So I see the advantages of having an ESG fund house. I see that obviously I think most people want a bit of socially driven sort of investing, and they want to know what sort of companies they invest in, and they want to invest in companies where they think that their values fit in. So I get that way it's very advantageous and everything. So what could be the possible disadvantages of such a fund house?
The main disadvantages is, like, again, if you don't invest in companies like nuclear or coal, or if you're not able to pay people well, then we'll not get power. So even now in today's industry, power is mainly through coal. Large economies need coal. Water is depending only on it depends on how much rains we get, what is their capacity of generation of electricity from water. It's there, but it is limited. And again, solar is like only 12 hours a day you could get.
Right.
You can generate energy.
Right.
They tried all these wind energy. Wind energy is only in certain areas, and climate change also has affected how much energy we can get from wind. So, but people want to improve their lives, and it can only be done through electricity.
Right.
And we have improved a lot, but still, we still need. We are too dependent on coal and other things, so we can't switch off just like that. We may need long-term planning. A lot of people, at least one of the proponents against ESG is always termed that nuclear is the solution, gas is the solution, because gas has very less carbon emissions,
Right.
and then even nuclear has no emissions.
Right.
And some of the other disadvantages, like we do a lot of research on these kind of seeds. So we do a lot of kind of crossing and things like that,
Right,
and then
right.
like bio seeds, and there are a lot of controversies. People want to go organic, but if we really want to feed all the 8 billion people on earth, then we need to produce a lot more food, and so we need these kind of nitrogen induced or nitrogen laced fertilizers, and we need to generate so much food to feed everyone,
Right.
and we are still not in a place where we can just completely switch over to organic. So the final idea is, even in agriculture, there needs to be a balance. We cannot completely switch over to organic. We also need a little bit of balance between how much fertilizers we are using and so on. And when it comes to electricity generation also, we need some kind of a balance. Coal is the one primary one. We need to find some other kind of fuel source, and we are getting there. But again, when it comes to oil, there are also a lot of controversies. So all these last 10 years and 20 years, a lot of people have been protesting against oil companies, investing in oil companies, and then protesting against these kind of
Right,
companies.
right.
So these companies are not invested in building all these drills and ecosystem factories where they can extract more oil. So whatever they're extracting, they're just selling.
Okay.
But now this has created a shortage of oil. So this ESG kind of thing, if we completely stop people from oil, then we'll completely depend on certain countries where they're extracting oil.
Right.
And other companies will be completely dependent on them.
Right.
And this has been the larger crisis these days, the geopolitical crisis that we are
Yes,
facing now.
Yes, yes.
So the ideas are good, and then there are also people are against weapons, people are against tobacco. Okay, at least tobacco is fine because it's very harmful. We know that. The thing is, a lot of tobacco farmers are dependent on it. So how would you move away from them? I mean, how would you ask them to move away from tobacco and so on? And then weapons and firearms, yes, it is not a great investment, but how will armies protect the countries?
Exactly.
How will you stop an invasion if you don't
Yes.
have weapons and firearms?
Yes, yes.
So that is again a controversy, and then human rights, animal welfare, and then other product safety issues and things like that. All these things are a lot of problems are there. They are recognized that they are problems, but we cannot completely stop it. Just like say, okay, we are not no one is going to invest in them anymore. That will only cause more problems.
Yeah.
And now we need more oil. We need more weapons. Every country is looking to get more weapons, get more oil energy out of it. And then we are ignoring one of the good environmental things like nuclear and then natural gas. Natural gas can be used as a substitute for coal, and nuclear also can be used as a substitute for coal. So let's move away from coal, move to these technologies, and then we can think of, okay, what else can we do better? So it needs to be more incremental. It cannot be just one day either throw everything away and start from scratch. It's not possible.
Yeah, and I get it. That's definitely one big disadvantage. And I also think another disadvantage is that most fund houses, there's no standardization on the criteria.
Yes.
Yeah.
So every fund house will have their own criteria.
Yeah.
Some people will say, okay, I am okay with firearms, weapons, because they have good corporate governance structure.
Right.
They're very women also equally employed. But weapons are okay. Some will say weapons are not okay. Some will say nuclear is okay. Some will say natural gas is okay. But some others will say no, these kind of sources and so on.
Yeah.
So it is. There is no standard. There is no one person cannot agree on all these kind of things. There are too many other concepts.
Yeah.
And one of the main proponents of ESG, there are a couple of people.
Proponents.
Proponents against.
Against. Okay.
They are posing against ESG as mainly there's a dean of NYU Stern, Ashwath Damodaran. He's very famous for doing valuations on companies and then writing investment books on valuation.
Okay.
So he has come out with a very good paper or very good kind of slides and like who benefits. We have to look at that. Where is the money going? And then what is the difference between index fund, mutual fund, and then an ESG fund? If the stocks are the same, then you're only paying a higher expense charge.
Right.
So there is not much of a difference. So those kind of things you have to be aware of. There are a lot of risks, but even with ESG kind of stocks. And then, for example, one of the main controversies, one of the fund houses in their criteria, Tesla was not part of ESG, their ESG fund, because they did not meet the governance part of it. But actually, if you consider, use common sense, that is the only company that is doing sustainable and environmentally, good
and it
investing.
has results right now.
Results, exactly.
Yeah.
And but there again, people say that the company is not managed properly, or they are not really transparent and things like that. So, and even Amazon, like Amazon is not treating workers well, but Amazon is one of the largest companies in the world. It actually decides your GDP of the US, because number of people employed, largest number of people employed in that company. So can you completely ignore it? No. So that's the thing. What is the criteria you're setting? And if it is questionable, then everything goes for a toss. Ashwath Damodaran really said a nice thing, that you cannot outsource your values to these kind of fund houses.
Right.
Your values are your values. You cannot ask someone else to take care of your values.
Yeah, and I suppose, I think I read this somewhere where Ashwath Damodaran also says that, you can't really put social impact and investing in the same basket.
Yeah.
I think that they are sort of like contradictory to each other, because investing is about making a profit, and you can't really insert values into it, because they're sort of contradictory to each other.
Yeah, so when you build an industry, when you build a company, you are trying to get the maximum cash flow, the most amount of efficiency and productivity. Once you get the profits, it's up to you where you want to invest those profits. Maybe, for example, some of the ideas that he's giving is, you invest in whatever you want, get the profit, and then use those profit to do, or to encourage people to do environmentally conscious things. But it is very stupid, or not really worth your time or worth the company's time to force them to do some things.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we discussed ESGs, environmental, social and governance fund houses, why they came up, what sort of stocks and they cover, and the pros and cons of such fund house. And I think that's a good spot to end it there today. Hey, thanks for listening to Bob and Tag Talk. Please consider following us on our Instagram and Facebook pages. We put out weekly summaries of the topics discussed on the podcast. And if you found this episode informative, please like, share and subscribe.